Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters by AnfieldIndex. The Reds are back, ladies and gentlemen, aren't they? They are still top of the league. They are still enjoying victories over Chelsea, but it maybe wasn't as easy as some of us would like, but a win is a win, and top of the table is top of the table. And here to talk about it on the back of a windswept Anfield, it's fair to say that, isn't it, David Lynch?
Yeah, it nearly got blown away coming out of the ground yesterday. It was absolutely crazy. Didn't expect that at all. And to be fair, it's funny really because it didn't seem to have like a massive effect on the game itself. Usually it kind of does. Maybe having that extra huge stand there actually sort of closes it off a little bit more. But yeah, horrendous conditions outside, but a decent game and a decent win for Liverpool as well. So yeah, the feeling's pretty good at the moment.
It is, no doubts. And we had a clear idea, ladies and gents, what we wanted to talk about it, but my colleague kind of ruined the agenda. And I won't really take too much more than that because it is yours, to be fair. I saw you broke the story. It's probably good news that people want to hear, and it involves the skipper, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we spoke to Virgil after the game yesterday. He's always very generous with his time, always stops to speak to us. He's great like that. And yeah, it's had some good news on his contract, which is that you're confirming that kind of talks are open and ongoing at the moment over a new contract. He couldn't say anything more than that in terms of where that's going up for obvious reasons. But I think that's a positive step, not least because I think the last time he was directly kind of asked about it was maybe in pre-season, the Anfield game in pre-season, and he kind of said we haven't even spoken about it yet. So the fact that they are speaking now and that's ongoing, I think is progress and shows that Liverpool are working towards sorting it out. So obviously the next step would be to have a positive outcome from that. But yeah, it's certainly a step forward in the movement that everyone wanted to see.
Yeah, definitely a boost going into a crazily busy week. And I mean, there's so much to unpack from yesterday. And we'll talk like we normally do, ladies and gents, about performance. It's a weird one also. I'm asking you this, David, because we won. The result was what was crucial yesterday, especially after what had happened before, and sort of the other ones were in the title hunt. You probably heard it as well. There was a big sort of let off at full time, wasn't there? A sense of like happiness, but fair to say almost a sense of relief a little bit as well.
Yeah, because I think it was much trickier than maybe a lot of us would have expected. I mean, I thought coming into this one, I thought Liverpool would maybe win it handily. I thought Chelsea hadn't really faced any tests. I thought Liverpool looked a serious team. And I thought, you look back to last season, Liverpool beat them 4-1. They take 28 shots in that game, which absolutely battered them. And I thought, yeah, Chelsea maybe have closed the gap a little bit. They've looked impressive in parts in this early part of the season, but I didn't think they closed it so much as to give Liverpool the game that they did yesterday. So it was a really tricky one. And as you say, a feeling of kind of relief after that Liverpool come through the victory because, even Arne Slot says in his post-match press conference that he thought it was kind of an even game pretty much. And I think a lot of the statistics kind of show that. So it was a real test and Liverpool come through with the 3 points, which is important. But it was, it wasn't a dominant performance, I'd say, from Liverpool's side.
It was a weird one because I know you, like me, you were in the main stand. So we got an interesting overview to start with. And we let Chelsea have quite a bit of the ball early on, but there wasn't the maybe intense press we thought there would be, especially because Chelsea's weakness has been playing out from the back. They've been caught a few times, especially like Sanchez, etc. But did you almost look at it like me a little bit like, okay, there's 4-2-4, but it seems very almost contained in banks and trying to force Chelsea to play through it rather than get onto the keeper, get onto the centre-back straight away.
Yeah, it was. I think the first 10 minutes actually wasn't. It was quite aggressive in that there was a few turnovers in those moments. That first 10 minutes, and I thought Liverpool could absolutely batter Chelsea here if this continues. I mean, the one where Gakpo closes down the keeper and that goes back into his hands. A couple of moments, the turnover where Jota gets it, and it not really a foul for me. Quite aggressive in those moments, but then seemed to shrink into sort of being passive. And for me, it's a strange one really because I don't think Chelsea go on to create an awful lot, but they clearly dominate the game in terms of holding possession. And I'm kind of caught between two modes of thinking on this, really, in terms of whether that was the aim for Liverpool, was to allow them to have it, to not let them have transition moments, and to make it so that Chelsea had to unpick Liverpool, which is not something they've been great at in comparison to, in those transitions, they have looked really dangerous when the games gets a little bit like that. So whether that was a plan, but I can't buy into the idea that Liverpool wanted to just allow Chelsea to pass through them quite as easily as they did time and time again. I mean, one of the things I highlighted at full time, and Josh Williams put out a really good graphic today on Twitter showing the kind of supporting my point, really. I shared it on my own Twitter if people want to have a look. But basically, that Liverpool kept walking their left back, which was Gusto to start with, and then Vega when he came on, into midfield to invert them and just creating numerical superiority there. Because Liverpool were defending in this 4-2-4, what was basically happening is then the 4 was getting pushed up onto a Chelsea 3, and Chelsea were basically, when Nicholas Jackson dropped in, ending up with a 5v2 in central areas in the middle. They find it so easy to get through. I mean, one thing you could, and like I say, I just really don't think, as much as they maybe were thinking, we'll let Chelsea have the ball and we know we can contain the threat in that way, and they were successful in that. I'm just not sure that it was fully the idea for Chelsea to find it so easy to dominate that part of the pitch. And I wonder if that Slot will think that, that was one of the lesser parts of the performance and one area you'd like to kind of work on, because Chelsea are clearly a good side, but obviously sides who are a little bit better. You're thinking Arsenal, Real Madrid could maybe kind of capitalise on that. So, I think that's something that for me, Liverpool needed to work on. But one thing I will say is that although they were passive in that and Chelsea were dominating that central area, Liverpool's ability to get back in and defend from there this season is unbelievable. And I thought they were great again in that, Gakpo getting back, Salah getting back to, as soon as the ball was passed beyond that 4, took him back in to make it more difficult. And then the midfielders banking in front of the back 4 and just creating a clog of bodies. And you saw where Chelsea kind of got the shots and the touches in and around Liverpool box. It just shows that Liverpool were really restricting where they were able to do that and making it tricky for them to generate any real sort of opportunity. So they end up with an XG count, which is around 1. But a lot of that's down to total shots as well that Chelsea were taking. They took 12 shots to Liverpool's 8. And I thought, again, as so many sides have, they struggled to generate high quality opportunities against Liverpool. So that was really good. So I thought a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of performance. And I'm maybe more down on this performance than I have been any of the others this season, really. Because I think, Bournemouth, their high XG count came after Liverpool were 3-0 up. Same with Manchester United. This was the first one where there was just that dominance there from Chelsea in moments that I just didn't like to see. But, you kind of caught between how much of that was the plan and how much was it Liverpool not doing well, and then also mitigating it by saying they did do well in terms of the defending. So, yeah, a tough one, really. The one thing, my main takeaway, I think, is that Liverpool did really well, good win. But I probably don't want to see that approach in the next few big games that are coming up, because I just think there's a risk maybe Liverpool will come a little bit unstuck. So I may be slightly more down on it than I perhaps should be and than I have been this season. But that was just my overall feeling coming out of the game.
It is a weird one. It's like you say, it's almost that tone element, because it's deliberate by design. You can tell the way Slot sets them up and almost like forces teams to do that. And it's interesting that it kind of takes me back a little bit to when we did a random game, but the Brentford pod. And we talked about how Liverpool almost at times just let, if you remember, Aya, I think it is, the Brentford left, just walk into midfield, and that gave them superiority there. Gusto was the one who did it. And you just wonder at times, you are asking an awful lot of those midfield too to scramble across like 5 players quite often as well. And it's not come unstuck, don't get me wrong. And Slot could obviously say, well, I've got my bank of 4, so it's by design. Are you just wondering, though, if we don't tweak this, there's a later sting in the tail to come maybe down the line? Teams might work it out.
Well, I just think, Gusto, for example, I just don't think he did an awful lot with it when he was in there to be the extra man or whatever. And I don't think, Caicedo and Lavia, I thought they both played actually quite well. But I think in terms of absolutely cutting you open, even though Caicedo does play the through ball for the goal, generally he's not a massively creative midfielder. So I think what Liverpool did is put a lot of stock in ensuring that Cole Palmer, he was never the free man. Yeah. And then if Chelsea did have a free man, it was Gusto on his left foot trying to cross it in or whatever. But obviously, as I say, that probably worked in that game where Chelsea are so Cole Palmer centric. A lot has to go through him. But if you try and replicate that against Arsenal, you might struggle a little bit, particularly if they get Odegaard and Saka back. And, if you tried it against Real Madrid again, I think they've just got quality absolutely everywhere. They will hurt you. So that was my only kind of little worry about it, really. And But it's the first of the sort of many big games that are coming up. Maybe it's going to be really horses for courses in terms of his tactical approach. Maybe we're going to see just how flexible Slot can be actually in these runner games. They have a different plan for every team. So I'm kind of excited to see that. But yeah, it was just that minor concern I felt really.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see, like you say, 7 in 20 days, how this bears out, and if we're talking about it a bit down the line. And we always ask man of the match. Now, in simple terms, if this isn't a Scouser, I'm pressing the end call for now button for everyone, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I picked Curtis in my ratings. I thought he was absolutely fabulous. I mean, the 2 goal contributions in terms of winning a penalty, scoring a goal. Maybe could have got lucky with that other penalty and got awarded that one. So just involved in everything on the attacking side of the game that Liverpool did well, and then everything he did off the ball, he was the outstanding midfielder in the defensive aspects as well. I thought Marshall and Cole Palmer largely fell to him because of the side he was on, and he was absolutely physically dominated him, which was fantastic. He gets that. Even the moment that Palmer looks like he's got the better of him, he gets that blocking where he's on the floor and swings a leg at it. Yeah. I just thought it was just a marvellous performance, really. And, again, when he's named there on the team sheet, maybe a few eyes rolling from some fans don't really appreciate him and they think, I'd rather it be McAllister or whatever. I think he pretty much silenced anyone who might have said that. He was just, as I say, both sides of the ball, absolutely phenomenal. And, yeah, great to see that. I think the only question mark you ever have about Curtis, and this is as someone who's watched him come through the youth teams, and I remember seeing him at the age of 15 and thinking this kid is special. But the only question mark has been, can he stay fit? Can he find that consistency that he's lacking because he keeps dipping in and out of the team? But if he can put together performances like that, I mean, that just shows his ceiling there, and really, really hope he can get a consistent run now because he just showed what he's all about yesterday. Brilliant performance and man of the match for me by a million miles.
Yeah, I probably even enjoyed the block from Palmer more than the goal in a way. He was just all around the pitch, and we'll get on to his penalty and non-penalty later on at the same time as well. I suppose the other big positive from yesterday is we've talked about Liverpool's midfield, and we've talked about it being a 3, haven't we? It's been Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, and maybe looking for alternates or cover. Jones, has he made that? Listen, Slot's going to have to make a call to leave one out each week. There's 4 real starters there now.
Yeah, it's definitely given him an interesting decision to make, particularly because these next couple of games, Leipzig away and Arsenal away, are tough ones where you might think that to favour solidity over anything else is probably your best approach. So it's interesting. Szoboszlai, what he's doing on the ball at the moment, there's a few little question marks there, hasn't he? Bit of inconsistency from him, although again, want to just mention his off the ball work is fantastic. Again, we really cannot forget about that. He just needs to be tidier on the ball, but because there are question marks there, Curtis very rarely gives the ball away. He's shown that he can create, he can score. Just gives the manager a decision to make around. Can he be that third man? Can he be in that more advanced position and press him from there? It's a really interesting one, but again, like with every position on the pitch, when you have depth, a really, really good problem to have, and hopefully Liverpool can keep them all fit, keep them rotating, and keep winning off the back of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other Scouser, Trent, normally we're talking about him and we're talking about balls being pinged, crosses, assists, the attacking play and everything like that. There wasn't really much to this, but I'll notice that Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville were quite silent on his defending last night, weren't they, at the same time?
Yeah, I wonder what Roy Keane made of it as well after that bizarre shout during the international break. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I mean, he was quiet on the ball, very unusually for him. I mean, I think he only completes kind of 70% of his passes, which, even for someone who tries things kind of low on his side of things, he's usually, creates more chances, gets more balls into the final third than he managed. But, that he probably didn't have a lot of opportunities to shine in possession because for various factors, actually, one that Liverpool barely had the ball really in comparison. It was about 60% to 40, wasn't it, in Chelsea's favour? And also, first half in particular, Sancho was man marking him to make sure that he couldn't get into the game. But, he didn't lose heart on the back of that, that he couldn't influence the game on that side. He just decided, okay, well, if this is how it's going to be, I will just lock down my side, and Chelsea are not getting in here. And I just thought he was so good defensively. I mean, he forces Sancho off. He did not get any change out of him whatsoever. So, forces that sub to be made. And then Neto, again, I thought he had a couple more moments than Sancho, but I still think that Trent won that battle, really. Neto, the most joy he had really was running inside towards the centre halves, not going down the outside of Trent because he could never get away with it. So, it's ridiculous, really, that he doesn't get mentioned when they're so critical about his defending. How could he not have watched that game and think, I'm always hammering him. Look how good he's been here. And he was brilliant defensively. And he's been brilliant defensively all season. But again, he has been brilliant defensively for most of his Liverpool career. I'd say, some of the defensive records that Liverpool have had with him on the pitch show that he's never been as bad as has been said. But I do think there's been just an uptick, just a little kick on in terms of his defending, his approach to it. And he's also helped by being in a slightly more sane sort of tactical setup as well. But we really are seeing the best of him defensively. And I love how he seems to sort of really, really enjoy it at the moment, his defending and getting a little nick in to give away a throw in or whatever. He really seems to be committed to it. And yesterday was more proof of that. He's absolutely brilliant defensively. And yeah, would have liked to see more praise of that from the pundits. But yeah, I don't suppose you're going to get that from Gary Neville or Roy Keane.
Very true. And it's interesting, like you say, at the start of the season, Slot talked about they'd had that conversation, and Trent talked about it as well, allowing him to be critical of Trent's defending, talk about where he needs to be improved. So whatever they're discussing, it is completely working. And it was interesting because so much of Chelsea's game or attacks did come down that left-hand side. They even switched Nkunku over as well. One player that it would be almost remiss, and I always think sometimes you can just take it for granted not to talk about him. And Arne Slot called Mo Salah out afterwards to say he had a great game on that side, helping back defensively. He held defensively, another goal and assist, into the Premier League top 10, joint ninth as it is now for all-time scorers, more records to Sunderland, same assists as Thierry Henry. We are watching a genius, aren't we?
Yeah, you can get blasé, right? Because I don't think I even mentioned him in my post-match video. And it's like, you win the game 2-1 there. He scores a penalty and sets the winner up with an absolutely sensational ball. But because you're just so used to it, you don't mention it. And he's brilliant again. In everything else he did, like Arne Slot said about him getting back in at right back, loved that moment. But his defensive work was very good. And then, his shielding of the ball, getting Liverpool up the pitch, kind of bullying gusto down that side was great. He just played really, really well, but you're just so used to his standards being that high that you barely mention when he has a fantastic game, and it's definitely worth mentioning how good he is and how good he was yesterday. And yeah, more goal contributions in games against sides that are going to be in and around the top six. That's just him all over, isn't it? He's always a man for the big occasion, but he's always the man for every occasion. He scores in most games.
Yeah, that big six record is absolutely ridiculous when you see it written down on paper. And one player that didn't start, and we've been honest, we've talked about him quite a bit, not always in the most favourable terms, but Darwin Núñez had a real impact from the bench yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, we have been critical. I've been critical. I've written things that are critical of him. But, if he continues to perform like that, then that criticism will fade away, because I thought that is exactly what Liverpool kind of need from him. He comes on in his first touch as a really confident little flick into Salah, and then he's on his bike to head in behind. And, kind of reminiscent of what happened with the Bournemouth goal that he scored, in terms of, he gets the headed flick on and then he's getting the run and trying to be fed in. And I think it just seemed to, give him a boost immediately, that his first contribution was a good one. And then he just built from there. I mean, his pressing was fantastic. His working build-up. I mean, what the game I kind of wrote about him after, I think was it the Bologna game, and he gave the ball. I think he completed 4 out of 12 passes, which is just not good enough. I think yesterday his ratio was much higher than that, much better. And as I say, that's kind of exactly what Liverpool need. They need him to be more secure in build-up. They need him to be able to, to contribute on that side of the game and bring all the pressing and everything else that you would expect from a Liverpool centre-forward. And yeah, just a really, really good step forward for him, hopefully. And you just hope, can he keep that up now? That's the big question. Particularly after Jota gets that knock, it's important now that he comes in. And we spoke on the last pod actually about, what needs to happen. Did Liverpool have enough up front? And my shout was, if Jota stays fit for the majority, I think so. But if Darwin Núñez plays like that, then, you know, for any periods that Jota is out, then I don't think Liverpool will have too many problems. And just looking on the stats here, actually, in terms of his completed passes, so he only completes 8, which again is fine. I think it's a feature of this system that he only attempts 8 passes, which I think is a feature of this system that your centre forward doesn't seem to be massively involved in build up, and I think we've seen that under Slot. But he completes 6. So we're at 75% instead of what I think it was 25% he did in the Bologna game. So that, you know, you don't have to complete every one, but if you can be, you know, near that 75, 80 mark, and and some of those passes were really good, by the way. I mean, the one he fires in behind for Gakpo is sensational.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we want to see from him. Even if it's not that he's providing massive goal threat, that's kind of fine if you're facilitating what's going on around you, and he absolutely was. So, yeah, you know, been maybe a little harsh in my criticisms of him in the past, but we'll absolutely point out when he's playing well. And I thought he was brilliant and a massive part of Liverpool going on to win that game after, you know, the early blow of that Jota withdrawal.
Yeah, and Andrew Beasley tweeted because he put the average positions. Quite often he was in midfield, but he was nicking the ball, he was holding it up. And I think the one thing we haven't probably seen with Darwin a lot, we've got to be honest, is there was intelligence to that performance, winning fouls, getting in smart areas, like not trying to do too much. And there was a head loss moment at the end, but everyone lost their heads, to be fair. Arne Slot lost their heads when, you know, the ref didn't give that as a foul. Well, that's a different discussion.
One thing I loved as well was when he gets in the clash with, I can't remember which Chelsea defender it is actually, and he sort of goes down and he's joking about it. And I thought, that, do you know what, that was quite encouraging, because I thought it showed, you know, he's cool-headed, he's laughing about it, he's not sort of too intense that he's going to get himself sent off or anything like that. That you know, I think sometimes sort of stripping some of the emotion away from him would actually be quite helpful in terms of him keeping his head and being a bit more serene in his play. So I really like that moment as well. So yeah, great. And I just really hope he can, you know, if he's needed for the next couple of games or whatever, that he can keep that up, because it was really, really encouraging performance.
Yeah, absolutely. You fancy he's going to get an opportunity that way. And this is a player that we don't really mention. We probably mentioned it, like, would he look in January? And it could easily, again, get overlooked in everything that happened yesterday. Joe Gomez coming on, because there was worry with Conor Bradley being out. Oh, God, who's, you know, when Trent's coming off, this is a tough game. Chelsea are going down the left. He was a brilliant sub, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a little bit kind of questioning why Trent was being brought off on the basis that I thought he'd been so good defensively, but I think obviously the manager explains after the match, doesn't it? Trent had a bit of illness, so, you know, when you factor in that he'd been away with England and played both games, that you've got to kind of protect him and look after him. So I get it, I guess, from that perspective. But looked a really good sub when Joe Gomez plays the way he did. He was, he just seemed to win everything that came down his side, really cool in possession. And I mean, you know, it would have probably have been Conor Bradley had he not got that injury. But, you know, the fact that Gomez, what a decent third option at right back to have there to come in. And still think there's a really big chance he does go in January. But what a loss, really, because, I mean, what he adds in terms of squad depth is unbelievable. And I think he showed that again yesterday coming in and, did really well.
Yeah, so many performances to like. Some performances not to like. I feel like that naff program now on Sky Sports, Ref Watch, or whatever it's called. But we've got to talk about John Brooks and how he did that way. I mean, we'll break down the incident shortly, but I'll be honest, I was in the stadium, probably like most, was screaming because obviously the passion and everything in the stands. What did you make of John Brooks' performance?
Yeah, I didn't think he was very good at all. I think some of the big decisions he actually got right, but I think his general management of the game was appalling. He let a few 50-50s kind of go early doors and then started just arbitrarily pulling it back to when he decided that they weren't then going to stand. I think the moment where Jota looks to sort of get through, I think a very, very weak one that he just decides. And then every single shoulder-to-shoulder challenge then going forward seemed to go against Liverpool. And that one on Núñez at the end, I mean, Arne Slot is a cool character and he looked like he was ready to explode, didn't he? I mean, that the clip of him and Núñez is so funny, but he's already, his head is absolutely chocker because of the Premier League referees. And yeah, I thought John Brooks' management of the game was absolutely appalling, to be honest. And it's worth always mentioning that when you win, because I think it's, there's no sour grapes there. I just thought he was, a shocking refereeing performance. And sometimes you wonder, did he go into these games thinking, I'm not going to be cowed by the Anfield crowd, I'm going to be strong, and that results in then giving these really iffy, weird decisions across the game. Just didn't think he was very good at all.
No, I have no idea what Maresca was talking about in being swayed by the crowd, because he did a good job for Chelsea at times. No idea.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could not believe that quote when I saw it. I wasn't in Maresca's press conference because it was in the mix zone, but I don't know what he's talking about. Did he think Darwin Núñez fouled Vega at the end there? Because I certainly didn't. But I had no idea what that shout's about at all.
Yeah, crazy. And the penalties, the one that was, then the one that was, but wasn't. So we'll go penalty number one first of all. The one that Mo Salah dispatches, that's easy. That's a foul by Colwell on Jones, isn't it?
Yeah, not really sure why Colwell even bothers to argue. Really, it's a pretty nailed on one. Ref gives it on the pitch, doesn't he, as well? So good. You've got to say that. Like I say, I think most of the big decisions I actually think the ref did well. It was just his general management of the game. But yeah, that for me, nailed on penalty. No question about it, really.
Penalty number two, the one that was given but then reviewed and taken away. The only thing I struggle with, because it's an interesting one, it's one of those ones where I think, well, if it's given, it'll stay given. And if it's not, it won't get overturned. But the VAR intervention, which we've been told since the start of the season, is supposed to be a high bar. It's not about re-reffing. It's that clear and obvious error talk. What were your thoughts, I suppose, on the decision originally? And now that you've seen it, do you think he's made the right call, the right outcome with VAR intervention?
Yeah, for me, I think that was a correct decision, to be honest. I mean, and I understand the argument that once Curtis Jones kind of pokes it past Sanchez, that he still does it kind of impede him, but I just think you're never getting that, really. That it would be unusual if they factored that in. And the fact is, for you talk about high bar for an overturn, but my suspicion is the referee has maybe said he didn't think there was any touch there from the keeper on the ball, and so they can then say, well, that is a clear and obvious error because there is a fairly significant touch on the ball. And so it is kind of a tackle, isn't it? And probably enough for me for an overturn. I think, as soon as I saw the replay in kind of slow motion, you saw how significant a touch he gets on the ball. It kind of just looks like a decent tackle, really, in the end. And I know some will disagree, but, judging by what we've seen before, for me, I was not surprised at all that it got overturned. And I like personally, I think that was the correct decision, to be honest. Based on what we've seen and what feels right, I think they were right to overturn that. And you have to say when that happens, again, if you agree with me about the decision, that good use of VAR, referee gives the decision because it looks a penalty first time, but he gets another chance to look and overturns the decision. I think it was a good process and a good decision, really.
Fair enough. And
I'd love to get the penalty, by the way, but
yeah, it doesn't matter in the overall outcome. And the one that I remember it happened, we were all screaming in the stand like, that's the same as Saliba, that he's got to go. It's exactly the same. Then you see the replay and, well, it's two different teams anyway. And it's a different call, to be fair, slightly. The Jota or the tossing yellow card. Do you agree with that one?
Yeah, I did. Again, when I first saw it, I thought he's in massive trouble here. And then you see the replay, you see quite how close Colwell is. You see the way that the ball is spinning sort of to his side as well. I just think there's enough doubt there to say that a yellow card is the right decision. And for me, you look at I know in fact we'll talk about the Arsenal one later, so I won't go into that detail, but I think there were significant differences there. And for me, that probably was a yellow card. But Tosin's lucky, by the way, because he doesn't really probably know where Colwell is, and he just goes for it anyway. And I mean, he could have been quite unlucky that Colwell was a few yards further back, and then it's an easy red card. So he's a bit of a lucky boy there, really.
Fortunate, but you can see the ball, unfortunately for us, maybe it's just angling away from goal, isn't it? Well, if it's heading to the middle, it's probably in Jota's favour. But yeah, all things in, they didn't really matter. But yeah, that's not going to save John Brooks, hopefully. And the bad news for us, because we shouldn't really escape this, as much as it's a great result, injuries are now on the sort of docket, aren't they, a little bit? And when Diogo Jota goes down, we all hold a collective breath. When Diogo Jota goes down and then strolls off the pitch substituted, we now all hold more of a collective breath, because it's usually when he strolls on, we get the news that we're waiting for. Diogo Jota is out for months and months on end. Is there any update? Are we hoping it is just a sort of a bruised rib and this is a short one?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the expectation is that he's not going to be around for the Leipzig game, whatever it is. And you spoke to someone today, and it's kind of just plan his scan today and have a look where he's up to, and we'll find out more. But be kind of surprised if he's involved in the trip to Germany. But hopefully it's just sort of landed on his rib and he's got a bang there, and it's something he can kind of get over pretty quickly. I mean, I didn't see anything like a knee bend or ankle or anything that would require a really lengthy layoff. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of times that big lads just seem to fall on him. But I mean, that has a lot to do with the way he kind of throws himself about, really, and the challenges he engages in. But yeah, a bit of an unlucky one. But fingers crossed, nothing too bad. But Liverpool will find out today when he has a scan and they have a look at that.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because it would probably have not been any surprise if Nunes had started against Leipzig with Jota back in for Arsenal. I think a lot of people would have factored that. So if it kind of ends up that way, it's not a bad result at all. Two players that he went through a few in the press conference on this lot, but he didn't cover these two at all. And everyone's kind of waiting to say, like, are they back soon? Where are we with these? Because we could really do with attacking options now as well. Chiesa and Harvey Elliott, there's no real update given. In fact, people were being honest and thought, hopefully they'll be back for Chelsea just gone. Is there any update on these two at all?
No, nothing at the moment. Again, sort of, I don't expect either of them to be back for midweek. I mean, certainly not Harvey. I mean, in fact, he's out on the grass, so he's not a million miles away at all. But he's got to kind of step things up, and maybe we're looking at a couple of weeks, maybe still yet to come back into full training, and then sort of see where he's at after that. Chiesa's a strange one. Not really had sort of any concrete update on that. He's given the impression he wasn't miles away, but as again, I've asked today, it doesn't look like he's going to go to Germany. So, we won't be seeing him in that game. Can he be back for Arsenal? We'll have to see. And hopefully the press conference out there in Germany as well, Slot will give a bit more of the detail on that one. And kind of similarly with Conor Bradley as well. I don't expect him to go to Germany either. So I know he's out for that length at least, but beyond that, we'll see. And it is the kind of starting to add up a little bit. You just hope these are little short-term ones and we can get people back soon, because it doesn't take much for your squad to look a little bit threadbare. So and we praised kind of availability at the start of this season, but it's already sort of started to go downhill. So yeah, like I say, hopefully these are all just short-term ones, but I wouldn't expect any of those four to be involved in the game at Leipzig, and you just hope you can get some back for Arsenal.
Yeah, and he even mentioned McAllister being ill, which may have explained the bench starting role. He went out with Curtis, etc. But yeah, fingers crossed. There's a lot of games coming up, and we need them all back. And I mean, this week's massive. Red Bull away, Arsenal away, but the Champions League and that big league game. With what we know at the moment, and obviously we'll see who travels to Germany, who's on the plane, all those types of things. Are you thinking that with the maybe lack of rotation options now, it will be a few changes for Leipzig, or do you think he might just almost have to go with what he's got a little bit, as it were?
I still think he's got options, hasn't he? I mean, getting Joe Gomez on for a few minutes there against Chelsea possibly gives him sharpness to give him a start in Leipzig, and you wouldn't be right in that game at all at right back, and in centre half. Jarell Quansah's there, absolutely waiting for a chance, and wouldn't be against seeing him either. McAllister has been rested essentially for the last game, so you again straight in, and you've got options there. So it's not looking too bad. Now, Diaz again in the forward line. So there are changes you can make, and again, I would be comfortable with Liverpool making changes. I know going away from home in the Champions League is tough, but Liverpool have won it in Leipzig, in recent years multiple times, haven't they? And I don't think it's a game that should hold any huge fears for them if they do the job and get it right. So I think there's potential for some changes there just to make sure Liverpool are okay and fresh going into it, because obviously then it's into that Sunday game, which is a big one as well. So yeah, I think there's still an opportunity for changes, and I would like to see Arne Slot kind of take that as well.
Yeah, because everything's focused naturally on it. It's such a huge week, but eyes are drawn towards that Sunday game, aren't they? I mean, with what we've talked about, almost the 4-2-4, the gaps that Chelsea maybe exploited with the fullback coming in, do you think with these two games, and naturally all eyes are being drawn towards that Arsenal game, understandably, do you think you will see any real tactical tweaks, or do you think, no, this is how we will go for both of these, in all honesty?
I don't know. It's an interesting one because he's been quite rigid in sticking to that 4-2-4 in the way that Liverpool defend since he's come in. And I wonder if a big part of that is that, not had an awful lot of time on the training ground to really sort of drill in something else, really, in terms of how they do things. And that maybe is why it's slightly passive at times as well, and the press isn't quite as aggressive, is because he doesn't feel he's had time. I mean, his pre-season was massively disrupted with who was missing. And, he's got his squad together, but it's game. So he doesn't have a load of time to work on stuff. So, maybe there's stuff that's going on behind the scenes that he could tweak things, but I just wonder if this is the approach he kind of feels he has to stick with at the moment to try and get Liverpool through this period before he, if he ever gets any time to work on something different.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And fingers crossed this time we're talking next week. We're talking with positive results as well. And we mentioned Arsenal. We always talk wider football. Arsenal fans are billing this as the tragedy of the century, aren't they? William Saliba's red card against Bournemouth. I'm sure you've seen it. You would genuinely think that literally they've conspired, the PGMOL, to take away Arsenal's title that's been anointed to them. I mean, this is just a red card, isn't it? It's that simple.
Yeah, so it's always been a red card. I mean, there's no one near to get on the cover. Ben White is 20 odd yards away, is he, on the other side of the pitch? Evan Nielsen is in for a one-on-one. The ball is bouncing in an area where the keeper can't get it. And Evan Nielsen has got a 4 or 5 yard head start on the basis that he's in an offside position essentially, but it's because it's Trossard that passes it back. So he's got a massive head start. He's going to get there, and he's dragged down. It's just a red card all day long, and it always has been for the past. I've watched football for 35 years, and it's been a red card. So I do not get the outrage, but again, feeds into the idea that this criticism that referees get is that a lot of the time it's based on what the people wanted the decision to be rather than what it was. And you can get yourself in a tangle about the PGMOL and all this if you are willing to, and if you're a child about it. But if you're complaining about red cards like that are absolutely nailed on and have been for years, then what we cannot help you. You will always hate the referees, and you will always think that there's conspiracy against your side. If you're willing to argue that wasn't a red card, it's madness.
Yeah, and in a way, I don't mind it because it just feels like it's distracting from everything around Arsenal. Probably adding a narrative they don't really need, but keep getting red cards.
I thought they were poor in the first 30 minutes. Up to that, I watched it. I thought they didn't look massively threatening. I thought, again, there are downsides to setting up with 4 centre-backs and 2 or 3 defensive midfielders in terms of how you work creatively as a side. Have they just tip the balance a little bit too far in favour of being solid? And that for me is the question mark over Arsenal. I mean, still think they're a fantastic side, by the way, and that's going to be a horrendously tough game that Liverpool have got coming up. But, in that game specifically, in a couple of the games so far this season, that is a little bit of the question mark around them. And yeah, if you keep getting deserved red cards, then you're going to make it difficult for yourself. So maybe Arsenal might want to kind of stop doing that.
Yeah, let's hope they make it 4 on Sunday, though. And the other side, the other rivals near the top, and as much as the narrative was there, because it's Wolves, we know the travesty Wolves have had with VAR, it's Gary O'Neill, it's Manchester City, and he talked about almost, which I didn't mind, the unconscious bias situation of a big club getting decisions and everything along those. What did you make of Manchester City's second goal, which was eventually given?
Yeah, I just thought it was a goal. I thought really, really good use of VAR. Again, if we take all our biases out of it and the idea that we're not going for the one that you want, the outcome that you wanted to happen, it's a big moment. The referee gets it wrong on the field. VAR takes a look at it and absolutely nails it, really. I mean, it's just no argument for me. So people talking about Bernardo Silva being pushed by the goalie. Okay, so for starters, the goalie's making that choice. If he leaves Bernardo Silva on him and doesn't push him away, Bernardo Silva will be offside at the moment that the ball gets headed, and the goal will get chalked off. He's too busy messing about with him, pushing him, and he's not offside at the moment the corner gets taken, because obviously he can't be offside from a corner. So he's too busy messing about with that. And then he's not set then for when the header gets met. And I mean, he probably would have struggled to save it anyway, but he's messing about with that. And but at the moment that Stones heads the ball and there is potential for Bernardo Silva to be offside, he's out of the line of the where the ball is coming back quite considerably when you see it from the angle in front. He's crouching down. He's having no influence on the goalkeeper whatsoever. just an absolutely perfect use of VAR, really. I mean, a real shame that City get that goal, but absolutely perfect that, a late winner has been, given to a team on the basis of a poor decision. Well, not a poor decision because it's a difficult one, but the wrong decision being made on the field. That is exactly what we want. And if Liverpool are in the same situation, you'd be like, would have been a travesty if they'd got that one ruled out. So, yeah, clever set piece from City in the way that they did it. Great header from Stones. Great use of VAR to get the right decision in the end. And everything else is just people crying because they didn't want City to score.
Yeah, it was typical. It was what we did want. We were hoping for right until the last second, but it's hard to, disagree with anything there. It's the right call overall. It is that sense. And I suppose the final thing that we'll finish on, because I know it is literally just come out, the latest Substat piece, and we've talked before about Liverpool's measliness in defence. I mean, they've only conceded 3 league goals, which is incredible at this part. And I know you've done a piece for your Substack around the pre-season briefing. So just for people that haven't seen that and hearing it for the first time, what sort of content is in that piece?
Yeah, so just sort of a little bit of insight into kind of how Liverpool have become so hard to beat in the start of the season, and a few pre-season meetings with Arne Slot and what was kind of pointed out in those, and how it's made, Liverpool a bit more tricky to beat, which I think we've seen not just in the game against Chelsea, but also across the entire start of the season. So it's something that is absolutely working, and is making Liverpool very hard to score against. And if you're that, you give yourself a better chance of winning games, which is exactly what they're doing at the moment.
Magic. Yeah, long may continue, but there's a lot to happen. There are 2 games. There are Champions League and the big game away at the Emirates on Sunday before we catch up again. So all it leaves me to say is ever, David, for the time, the insight and the answers, much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was the Media Matters for Anfield Index.